Burger King is today denying that they are attempting to flee to Canada to avoid paying corporate U.S. taxes. Burger King has reached a big deal, an $11.4 billion deal to acquire Tim Hortons, the Canadian donut and coffee chain. So what Burger King, which is based in Miami, has done is it acquired Tim Hortons, again, for $11.5 billion, and they're going to move the corporate offices into Ontario. Because while Burger King would still have to pay American taxes on what they sell there, they would, because they're a Canadian company, they would no longer have to pay that. They would only be required to pay the tax rate internationally that Canada requires on everything they sell outside of there. So,
and also the tax rate in Canada is significantly less. It's 15% compared to theoretically 35% here in the United States. However, with corporate tax loopholes put into the equation, Burger King paid about 27% in taxes last year.
We have to take a look at graphic 12 because just what Anna's saying, we got that up there. The top U.S. corporate tax rate is 35%. The Burger King tax rate is 27%. But when people talk about that corporate tax rate of 35%, they're full of shit. Because in 2010, if you take every company that made money in the United States, what they really paid was what you saw there at the bottom. 13%.
Yeah, so look,
that's the effective tax rate.
I feel like that's fudging the numbers a little bit, right? Because if you look specifically at Burger King, it's 27%. If you take all of the major companies and you put them together, then the effective tax rate is 13%. But that's because there are some companies like, or banks, for instance, like Bank of America or companies like Verizon, where in some years they pay absolutely no taxes at all. Well, they get a tax refund.
Right, GE, Google, Apple.
Yes.
Because it's very easy for tech and drug companies, which also pay very little. They have all sorts of ways to shift their earnings abroad and pay very little. A company like Burger King, which sells actual things, cheeseburgers, Whoppers, you can't, there's no creative way to make that Whopper that was purchased in Cleveland to run it through a shell company in Bermuda. So that's why Burger King pays a higher rate. So Burger King is saying very clearly that absolutely this is nothing to do with paying lower taxes, when in fact it seems pretty clear that that's what they're doing. Companies are using this idea of inversion, of buying a smaller international company and then making that the home to lower their tax burden here. The Huffington Post referred to it in a peculiar way. They said there was a stampede of companies trying to do this, and the Obama administration has said last month that they were looking at this and that they may issue an executive order to stop it. So the theory is that Burger King may be trying to beat that executive order. It seems pretty obvious. So again, the Huffington Post refers to it as a stampede. Let's take a look at graphic 13. 21 U.S. companies have announced plans to invert since the start of 2012.
Stampede.
Doesn't really seem like a stampede to me. Wow, 21 companies out of the, I don't know, 2 million companies that we have. So, but it's an issue. Walgreens was going to do it, and the outcry was so significant from people objecting to it that they shelved plans. They had merged with a Swiss company, and they were going to move there. Now they're still doing the merger, but they're not moving. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest with you about this story. So I'm the type of person who, will take in new evidence, even if it goes against my previous beliefs, and I'll be accepting toward it. And this is evidence indicating that people and companies will leave the country if they feel like the tax burden here is too much. Now, the fact that individuals that are at a higher income bracket have to pay 35% in taxes, and then certain corporations get all these nice little loopholes and they don't have to pay 35% absolutely enrages me, right? But what also enrages me is just the unpatriotic nature of what these companies do, right? They don't want to give back to the communities and to the country that gave them the entrepreneurial opportunities that made them successful. And that pisses me off. But the reality is corporations are amoral. They don't care about patriotism. They don't care about being the good guys. They care about their bottom line. So if they're going to have an opportunity to go to a different country, move their corporate offices to another country where taxes are lower, they're going to do it. And I understand why they do it.
Sure.
So this totally supports the notion that higher taxes lead to less jobs because people will leave the country, companies will move to a different country. I mean, Burger King will still exist here, so those people are still going to be employed here. But
yeah,
it doesn't.
actually won't. I mean, because Burger King just keep as many people employed here as they were. They're just
Right.
going to pay back less.
Yes.
Because they're going to make money that they, as an American company, the money that they make overseas is taxed here. Now they'll be a Canadian company, so we can't tax the money they make overseas at the same rate. That's all. It's just, but it's deceitful because we all know it's an American company.
Yes.
They won't even have to. They don't even have to move the corporate offices. It's just paperwork. Everybody will stay in Miami. They
Right.
don't have to do anything.
So, okay, so what do you do? I mean, there definitely should be some sort of policy or law put in place to prevent this from happening. They should pay their fair share of taxes, and 27% for a highly profitable company. They'll argue that they're not profitable because the fast food industry has been kind of, it's plateaued recently because of the fact that people are going to places like Chipotle and Panera instead. But nonetheless, it's still a profitable company. The fact that they refuse to pay their fair share of taxes is crazy, and they don't even have to pay the full 35%. They get to pay 27% because of those loopholes that are put in place.
It seems very obvious, and I'm not an economist, but what you want to do is close the loopholes and lower the rate and make it so every company, however you have to do it, that every company pays 19%, and then nobody pays 0, and nobody has to pay 27, and you cut a break to companies like Burger King that can't nuance it like that.
Right, right.
And you make sure that Bank of America and Citigroup and ExxonMobil and FedEx and General Electric and Honeywell and Merck and Microsoft and Pfizer and Verizon, all these companies that made gargantuan amounts of money offshore and left it there. Bank of America, $17.2 billion in accumulated offshore profits in 2012. This is from Raw Story. It would owe $4.3 billion in U.S. taxes. But they're not doing it. They're not paying them. They don't have to. They're leaving the money over there. Citigroup would owe $11.5 billion. ExxonMobil, $6.2 billion from 2010 to 2012. It has $43 billion in offshore profits at the end of 2012. FedEx is huge at $6 billion. General Electric, as I mentioned, and then the drug companies. And Microsoft, like companies that we like, $4.5 billion they saved in federal income taxes. But they made $61 billion in offshore profits. Pay the taxes. Be a man. Be a man. Do what's right and pay your taxes.
They're not going to do what's right. They're going to do what's best for their bottom line. Again, corporations are amoral, which is why I don't understand anarchists who want to deregulate the shit out of everything. Why would corporations or companies do the right thing? Please don't tell me the free market's going to decide, because the free market doesn't have any idea what's going on because they don't have access to perfect information. Our media fucking sucks.
Let me ask.
Don't get me into this debate about fiscal policy, please.
So Verizon. I have Verizon Fios. Right, for my cable and my home phone. I have a home phone, and so and for my internet, and I have Verizon Wireless. And these, have they ever given me a break on anything? No. When I tried to buy a new phone and take it back, I'd exceeded it by one day. I got to keep the phone. I got to pay $7,000. I can't upgrade 2 months early. I can't do anything. I pay a gargantuan amount of money. My wife and I combined, we have like 6 Verizon Wireless products, plus the home cable and the internet and the phone, right? Every time you call on the phone, every time you spend an hour and 46 minutes on the phone, and then they transfer you to somebody else who asks you to repeat the story. And in the last call that I had Verizon, I mentioned this in TYT Sports, the guy gets on the phone. I've been on the phone for nearly 2 hours talking to 3 people repeating the same goddamn story. And he says, and I'm sorry I'm going to do the accent because this is what he sounded like.
Damn.
Right.
You going to go there?
It's what he sounded like. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter. The accent is irrelevant. Anyone could say this.
Okay.
He says, I understand your problem, Mr. Mankiewicz, but can I just ask you one question? I go, yeah, okay, what? He goes, how are you doing today?
Oh, no. You don't like that.
How am I doing today? How am I doing today is I want to kill you and everybody in the house. That's how I'm doing today. Verizon. $19.3 billion in U.S. pre-tax profits from 2008 to 2012. Nearly $20 billion. $19.3 billion.
Yep.
What income tax do they pay over that 5-year period? 0. They got $535 million in tax rebates.
Refunds, yes.
They paid negative 2.8% in taxes, and they can't answer my fucking call! Or give me a frickin' upgraded phone. Fuck you. I think that was a very mature way to end the video, don't you?
I do, definitely.
Right.